Welcome back to the Altars and Ashes podcast, where we believe the Lord's kingdom still advances, the fire still burns, and God is rebuilding his people, households of faith. I'm Bowie Dallas Fleming.
I'm Austin Tucker.
And I'm Robbie Stringer.
And this is Season 2, where we are focusing on formation and legacy. And tonight we are going to round out our Sphere Sovereignty series. We've moved from the home to the church, and now we're headed to the government, the state. And we are going to talk about who is intended to be the servant of God for justice.
The world was dark, not just the darkness of night, but the kind that seeps into men's bones. Kingdoms rose and fell, tyrants strutted and trembled, and the devil thought the earth was his own. Then without trumpet or banner, heaven invaded, not with legions of angels in armor, not with fire from the sky, but with the cry of a newborn. And this is the strangeness of Christmas. It is once most magical and most martial of all stories. A child wrapped in clothing is also the commander wrapped in flesh. Heaven's battle cry is here. This is a book published by your host, Austin, Robbie, and Fleming. It's a 25-day Advent devotional calling families to prepare for Christmas like soldiers awaiting their king. Each page resounding with scripture, wonder, and warfare, the story of Christ's coming told as heaven's campaign to reclaim the world. You can purchase your copy today at theoldforgepress.com. That is theoldforgepress.com. Don't drift through December. Arm your hearts, light your candles, join the song of victory, heaven's battle cry.
Gentlemen, how you guys doing?
How you doing, Robbie?
I'm swell. I'm good.
You look swell.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're glowing tonight,
Yeah,
Robbie.
yeah. It's these Reese's Pieces that you brought out here. That's what I'm.
What I've learned is we can sit here and smoke cigars the whole time as long as we give him sweets.
Candy.
Candy,
And
or
ironically,
brownies.
he's the one man sitting at the table who has one of those just amazing metabolisms.
Yeah, so he doesn't gain any weight from it.
Mm-hmm. No, I have to be. I used to when I was younger. Now I have to be a little.
Now
more,
you have to
Now I have to be
moderate
a
a little bit.
Yeah.
I understand.
Says the man who's right in the BMI factor to two guys.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, so we're talking about God and government and how they go together and how they fit. You know, just to sort of give our listeners a recap, we talked about the home and how that was a sphere. And then we talked about the church and how that was a sphere and their different duties. And now we're going to talk about the duties of government under God. So should be a lively conversation. You know, government's a really boring conversation around us, but
Especially around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Nobody has any interesting conversations about government with family this time
that's
of
right.
year.
That's right.
November, that's the calmest time.
Yeah.
Have you thought that maybe like our founding fathers were trying to sabotage the holidays? Like they put elections like right before the time when families are together for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, so that everybody can tear each other apart about.
I think that's exactly
That
why
was the
they
plan?
did it. Yep,
Yeah.
that was the plan. Yep. All right. So the government is the minister of God. What do you guys think about that statement?
I think it's a biblical one, and I think it's also a call to order for the duties of the government as well.
Okay.
And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Maybe we should read the scriptures.
I was going to say, we got to start in Romans 13, right?
I'll read it. You ready?
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Let every person be subject to governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not terror to good conduct, remember that, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on wrongdoers. Therefore, one must be in subjection not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes. For the authorities are ministers of God and attending to this very thing. Pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed.
Okay. You want to do 1 Peter? I'll go ahead and read Psalm 2 while you're pulling that up. So Psalm 2 says, "Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, As for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, You are my son, today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the nations of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him."
Amen.
And then Robbie's going to read from 1 Peter 2, 13 through 17.
Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme, or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil, and to praise those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of foolish people. Live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor.
Amen. And the key, both there in 1 Peter and in Romans, was the fact that if you do good, you have nothing to fear.
Yeah, all three of them said that, actually.
Yeah. So, here's the key. They do not bear the sword in vain. But what happens when they bear the sword for Satan? What happens when you do good and they punish the good doers?
Well, let's maybe take one tiny little step back there. I think it's a great point, and I want to talk about that.
We'll probably get
what
there.
What is the purpose of government? Based on what we just read, what is the purpose of government? Is it a human invention?
It's ordained by God.
Okay. So what's it ordained to do then?
Now, the passage I just read in 1 Peter, in verse 13, it says that be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme or governor, and it goes on. So what I'm taking that to mean is, of course, different countries are going to organize their government in different ways.
Certainly.
So even though there's a sense in which that is a human institution because it is designed and created by men, ultimately, all of these spheres of influence that we've been talking about, God has instituted.
Right.
He is in charge, but he gives to man a portion of his authority to do the work for him.
Yes.
And anybody who's been in a leadership position has looked at someone and said, hey, I am authorizing you to do this for me.
Right.
And so that is what God has done in the home that we saw, as he gives to the man the position to lead the house, and to a degree the woman as well as his his helper.
Well, and he gave
to,
some of his authority to the home for that purpose, to be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, you're saying God gave the authority to the home for a purpose,
for education, and that's one of the spheres we've already talked about. Yeah,
and then last time we talked about the church, where he is also given his authority to his pastors and elders.
What they bound in heaven, what they bound on earth.
Right, they have legitimate authority.
Yep.
As long as you are part of a church, and and everybody should be part of a church.
And the authority comes from God's word.
Exactly.
And it does not break outside of that.
And so God has also given government authority.
Yeah.
He has delegated his, because he wants to create, at the very least, and we're going to probably try to get to this about what exactly the job of government is. But what it talks about in those passages is it talks about him having the sword, because he is supposed to punish evil.
Yeah, restrain it.
Says,
yeah,
restrain
exactly.
evil. Of course, government cannot rid the world entirely of evil.
Nope.
But what its job is to, as much as it can, identify evil and use force, if necessary, to push that evil back, to punish that evil, to try to create order in a world that oftentimes does not want to be just.
And if you think about it, all three of the spheres are to create order.
Yes.
So,
and with chaos, if you have anarchy, look at the French Revolution.
Oh, yeah.
history very well plays out what happens when a government falls.
Well, and especially when it's not grounded in God.
Well,
that's the difference between
the men of that society aren't grounded in God. It becomes like the French Revolution, a full out, let's behead the next guy who don't fully agree with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for people who aren't familiar with the French Revolution, as much as
it was in France,
he's here to define.
It was in France.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Great, yeah.
And so what you had is
and it was a revolution.
It was, in fact,
I've already got it.
It was multiple revolutions, one might say.
It went like 6 years.
Well, I don't remember the exact time frame, but what you end up with
is
our
history teacher doesn't.
Yeah,
even
yeah.
know,
I'd have. It's France. Who cares?
Yeah,
but.
You just earned so many points with me, Robbie.
Know,
you just earned so many points.
Sorry, I was in geography class today making fun of the French, so
yeah.
this is already
it's been pent up. For a while.
It's already in my mind. But what you ended up with is people trying to overthrow their government.
Yeah.
But what you ended up with is when they overthrew their government, then people overthrew them.
Yep.
And then people overthrew those people.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And so what you had is
and by overthrew, they just killed them.
By overthrew, they invented the guillotine.
The guillotine.
Yes.
Yeah,
let's not lose our heads.
Yeah.
on this here. Yeah. And so the idea is that what you ended up with there is you ended up with no true lasting governing authority.
Yes.
And you ended up with chaos.
Okay.
And they had no true governing document by which to establish that authority. There was no common Christian law because everything was done under landlords and governors at that time.
Well, what they were trying to do in the French Revolution, and for some people saying, why do I care about the French Revolution?
Right. You don't.
That way, no, it is a really important part of Western history because it overthrew a king. Yep. And to many people who are suspicious of strong government, they might be like, yeah, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
But it led to complete chaos. They tried to write founding documents only to write another one not long after that and kill a lot of the people who wrote the previous one. Mm-hmm. And so the revolutionaries of today become the establishment.
And then they've got to have a new revolution, right?
And then people revolt against them.
Yeah.
And so it creates a lot of instability. And that's one of the things I think that this is getting at is, in that passage in Romans that we read, that's Romans.
Mm-hmm.
It's written to the church at Rome. That was the seat of government.
Yep.
And Peter even mentions the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were writing this, these emperors were not good men.
Right.
And so, but I think what he's getting at is, even a bad government is better than no government at all.
Yeah.
Because you need people, even like the worst government you can think of, like a government that you think is tyrannical and oppressive, they to a certain degree create order.
Yeah.
Because they're going to probably punish murderers.
Yeah.
They're going to punish
some
thieves.
of the murderers. Some of
them.
Right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But that is better than chaos.
Yes. Yeah.
And so
chaos produces nothing. It only tears down.
Right. And it never lasts. Somebody rises up out of the chaos to create order. And oftentimes those people are as bad or worse than the people who are brought down.
And that's, there's something to think about there because the Bible teaches a connection between good leaders and God's blessing and evil leaders and God's cursing on a nation for turning from them. And I think we've seen both of that in our history here as a nation. I think you look at history in general, when people are turned towards God, the men in general are self-governing because the house is self-governing. And that produces men who fear God, who rise into government circles. And I think that's what we're missing here in the United States.
Well, it's really interesting. We could do a whole episode on the difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Because theirs happened right after ours, but they didn't have the grounding in biblical doctrine that we had. But I do want to do this. Let's bring it back because I know that this whole episode could go a certain way if we allow it. So what did we define government's role? We said to restrain evil and to reward good, to uphold good, to restrain evil. And so what you're saying is even a disordered government is still restraining some evil.
Right.
And so that's better than no government.
It's better than absolute chaos.
Yeah, I agree.
And every government throughout history has also done a lot of evil, including the United States.
Correct. Every government has done evil. Yep.
How dare you?
He's obviously not a patriot. Okay, so
1776. I'm
yeah,
It's very simple. My political party has literally never done anything wrong.
wrong ever.
The
right.
other political party has literally never done anything wrong.
Listen, Rob, you need to get over it. Kamala did not win. I'm playing.
You just
Rob,
blew
you know.
everybody's
Yeah.
ears out. It's probably what just happened. Sorry about that, folks. All right, so
Feeling the burn over there.
Yeah.
That's the cigar.
So is the servant, is the state or the government in the role of, you think about creating order, are they the role of the power, or are they the role of the servant? I guess is what I'm getting at. I'm trying to think how to articulate that. I'm not doing it so well, but what is their job when we say that God ordained that? He gave them orders to do, and he gave them the sword, right?
Yes.
Not the cross. And so when we think about the church's job, how is it different? This is where I'm trying to get. How is the government's job different from the church's job?
Well, the church doesn't have the sword.
Okay.
It has the word.
Okay.
The
sword of the Spirit.
Yeah. I see what you did there. But the government has the right to use force.
Okay. Yep.
And that's what it means by the sword.
So here's where I'm thinking in my mind. We talked about the Charlie Kirk stuff, and I think we maybe even talked about the service that they had afterwards. And Charlie Kirk's wife, I'm drawing a blank on her name. What's her name? Erica. Yeah. She says that she forgives the guy, right? And then the very next thing that comes up is up walks Trump, and Trump says, I don't forgive the guy, and we're going to try to, uphold the most possible punishment that we can give. And I thought, what a cool picture of grace, which is what we as the church are to give. And then you had a picture of the sword, which is not supposed to give grace.
Yeah, but at the same time, the church, what that one, I forget the name of the podcast, but he put it this way. He said, what the church should demand is that he find grace, that he asked, of course, they're not Baptist, that he asked for baptism and a rope.
Yes, right, right.
And that is the church, because the Bible's very clear. If man's blood is spilt because he's made in the image of God, by man's blood shall his blood be spilt.
Right.
And so it is one thing for the church to demand capital punishment, but it's the government's job to give capital punishment.
Or whatever punishment would be just in whatever
based on the
situation.
crime. Right. Not everything deserves capital punishment. Is that what you're saying? Speeding ticket?
Kill them all, and we'll just sort it out later. That's my philosophy. Yeah, no, not everything should be.
Historians are going to be asking, and they're going to be judging you and I for not taking Robbie out in this moment.
I know. What do we do?
I'm tempted to just not talk the rest of the episode.
No,
make people
we're
wonder,
actually just trying to get you to talk the whole time. All right, so what happens, though, when the state forgets their role?
They become tyrannical.
Yeah.
And that's...
What may I ask what you mean by forgets its role?
You may not. So what I'm saying is when they do not act when they do not do the job of restraining evil and rewarding good. So let's say instead of restraining evil, they promote evil.
Okay.
And instead of rewarding good, they punish good.
John Owen said it this way. He said, all government is from God, but not every governor acts for God. So, I mean, we have to understand the authority is given to them by God. However, they are still held under God, and God is the ultimate juror and judge of what is right and what is wrong. So how do we react? We always obey the highest authority.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we have to get back to.
You're saying that because as Peter said, you honor the emperor, but of course the emperor is not quite the highest authority.
Christ is king.
God is the ultimate authority. Christ is king, as you said, which means we do honor the emperor or prime minister or president and legislature or whatever, wherever someone's living. But
to
of course,
a certain point.
To a point where if you have two conflicting orders, you always obey the higher authority.
Well, and you said, I know I don't want to go down this road, but you talked about the difference between the American Revolution.
I absolutely want to go down that road.
I know.
But anyway,
but we got to do a historical.
I'm going to be real quick on it, but you got to understand all the complaints were addressed to the King of England because he was not in obedience to his own constitution. As a king, he was breaking his own law.
There's the point, though, that a lot of the American government forgets, is that the highest law is not the Supreme Court, it's not the president, it's not the judicial. The highest law is the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have...
Which springs forth from biblical concepts.
Right. But like when you have... So, for instance, if you have states that have the ability to, that say you can't carry, well, that's a state-level law, and that is subordinate to the Constitution.
Yep.
And so inevitably what you have is a government institution making a law that is against the higher constitution or the higher level of government. And so I guess what I'm getting at is when I'm thinking about like when the state forgets their role, and when I say forget, that might be kind, when they take on the role of not restraining evil but promoting evil, what they end up doing, and we talked about this when we talked about Daniel a few episodes back, they end up becoming an idol.
And idolatry is a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they're an idol to themselves. They think they're God.
Sure.
Well, I don't know if y'all caught this. It wasn't that long ago on the news. Which senator got up and said, you get your rights from the government? That wasn't that long ago. Who was it?
Yeah. He said he thought it was one of the worst things that he's ever heard, that somebody said that God gave them their rights. I don't remember who it was.
Yeah, he's like,
who it was.
Your rights
it was definitely
from the government.
Somebody on the left that said that.
I want to say it was a senator from New Jersey, but I could be wrong.
It probably
that sounds right.
Yeah. New Jersey or New York.
It sounds right.
I mean, but that's the thing is they think that we bear the image of the government, but we bear the image of God.
Right.
And so, like, I've talked to Christians who go, well, the American Revolution was an entirely unchristian thing. I'm like, you need to study your history out because they had broke their own laws and become tyrannical.
Yeah.
And so we are not chattel. Man is not cattle. We have value from God. And our forefathers, mostly the preachers in the pulpits, were the ones who were teaching those values. And the reason why there was a revolution, it was entirely justified.
Well, Bowie has said that...
You talking about the singer?
No, this Bowie Dallas.
Bowie
Dallas. Yeah.
Over here.
I forgot his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens.
Sorry, there's lots of smoke around here.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. So he says he doesn't want to discuss the American Revolution.
And I didn't say I don't want to. I'm just saying we might have a 2-hour episode.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ignore you.
Okay,
right now.
Excellent. I love it.
Because I do think this is important, because if our founding was illegitimate, I mean, we should say so.
If it was illegitimate?
Yeah, if it was if.
Oh, if it was.
If
right,
it was,
right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it is, and here's why. Because, we talked about the French Revolution, how they just kind of broke everything down. But the thing is that Christians have taught about this, particularly Protestants. Because, when Protestantism started, there was a lot of Catholic countries that were persecuting
Protestants.
Now, in all fairness, when a lot of Protestants got in control, they did the same thing.
No.
You could not be a Catholic and get an office in the United States until like...
Well, yeah, in America,
yeah.
That's true. Yeah. But I'm just talking about like in Europe when everything first started. However, there were a number of people, particularly from France, from before the Revolution. They were a very strong Catholic country.
Yep.
And a lot of Protestants really were looking and saying, what kind of government does God want? And so a number of them wrote books about this topic. Some of them were done under pen names, like fake names. Not that I know anybody who uses...
No, exactly. But, nobody would do that.
But one of Calvin's people that worked with him wrote one too, Theodore Beza.
Yeah.
And they wrote about these ideas on like, what is the role of government? What is their job, like biblically, like looking at the scriptures? And they did discuss, when is it appropriate to disobey the government? Because they understood that looking at the scriptures, we are to have a disposition to obey the government because it's from God. But is there a situation
in where you might
where you should?
Yeah.
And how should that be done? And I really believe that most of the not all of them, there was some stuff I could criticize, but for the most part, in our founding, where they looked what was going on that the King and Parliament of England were doing. As Austin was saying, they weren't obeying their own laws. And if you look at the Declaration of Independence, much of the Declaration of Independence, when you get past the famous parts that we all know, it is an explanation of why it is okay for them to declare independence.
And Beza wrote on the rights of rulers and the duty of subjects. That was one that you're really referring to there.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
And, they said, we understand that you can't just rebel against a government every time there's something you don't like. You read the Declaration of Independence, it says that. But eventually, there can be so many problems, so many things that it's doing wrong, that, as the book of Romans would say, that now you are being a terror to good. And they said, we feel like it is our responsibility to then sever our relationship with England and declare our independence. And they did this in an orderly way, where it wasn't just like mob rule.
No.
These were elected officials.
And they did declaration statement at first.
Right. And you had elected representatives of all of the states that wrote up documents and declared their independence in, I think, appropriate ways. And so that is fundamentally the difference.
And we also got to note that some of the first letters that were sent to the king of grievances gave the king a chance to follow his own law.
Of course, right.
I mean, they were not looking for a bloody war.
It's just like the reformers were trying to reform the church. They weren't trying to divide. And it was the same thing with the American colonists. They weren't trying to divide at first. It was only after they had laid the grievances out, and weren't getting any representation.
And I think sometimes we forget there's like 200, how many years was it between the colonist and the rebellion of 1776? I mean, it
like
was
100
years.
Early 1600s.
Yeah, so you're looking at
1620, I think is
1620 is when
Mayflower.
the Mayflower came over.
So
the colony of Virginia was here before that.
Right. The average age being dying at 40. You're looking at 3 generations of Americans before
they were actually even Americans.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan Edwards, that people often quote. I mean, he lived in the colonies. Never knew.
They call him the last Puritan, even though he wasn't really.
He's also considered one of the greatest American minds to ever live. And little do people know, he was people quote him and don't realize he was more known as a pastor.
Yeah, he was a pastor, right, before he was Princeton and all that.
Before he was the president of Princeton and before he wrote all those great works.
Yeah. All right, so let's do this. What happens? You were talking about, from time to time, I think it was Jefferson that said that the tree of liberty has to be refreshed from time to time or whatever. What happens when the government is unchecked? As Christians, how do we handle that? If they're unchecked and they start restraining good instead of evil, what does that look like? And I'm not...
I think there's good examples, like Jeff Durbin. Jeff Durbin online standing for the rights of the unborn. You'll see him out there, preaching, trying to win souls and try to save babies at these abortion mills. And you'll see cops show up and he'll start quoting the law. He holds them to their law. And then when they say, well, we know the law and we're going to arrest you, he goes, go ahead, it'll be tyrannical and I'll sue you.
Yep.
But at the same time, he's also going to the state legislator and saying, here's what should happen and here's why. So he's doing both sides, both hitting the lower magistrates and standing for truth.
Well, we hadn't even talked about
the magistrates. Yeah.
Maybe we got to talk about that.
Well, I mean, it's just like your example.
There's county government, there's city government, there's state government.
You want to change the world. Everybody thinks to change the world, you got to become president.
Yeah.
But you change the world by taking over your county seats.
Well, most of the time, the governmental laws that affect you most
are the
ones that are, at the lower magistrate level.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, even when you think about senators and representatives and stuff, it's like, well, there's also state senators and state representatives and and then you've got school boards and...
People forget that a state senate has more power over the individual state than the United States Senate. I mean, because each state has its own constitution. That's the only reason why we retained so much freedom during COVID compared to all the other countries.
All the other states?
Yeah,
I mean,
all the other countries, because some states were more free.
I got you.
Some states weren't.
Right.
And it kept America in this flux where they couldn't be as tyrannical as they would have been.
Yeah.
So,
well, because there's certain things that the president of the United States just did not have authority
the
to do.
power to do, right. Yeah.
Which sounds crazy to a lot of other countries, but I mean, that's the way our government is formed.
well, and that's the thing, is our government was set on limited powers divided among three, the judicial, the legislative, and the executive, and they were limited to constitutional duties. And slowly they've been spreading into states and taking over things they should not take over. It's danger. So now, if the federal government were to become fully tyrannical in the United States, it's only a matter of time, where they didn't used to have that much power. They used to be more in check.
Yeah. I mean,
we're getting off track, but
no, I mean, we're still talking about government,
because that talks about lower magistrates.
Yeah. And the government keeps getting bigger and bigger. I mean, that's just the nature. Government never tries to make itself smaller.
Like I get a kick out of everybody going, Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education. I'm sitting there going, that's not a constitutional duty.
It's also only been around since the 70s.
There shouldn't be. And by the way, our education was better when it hinged on the individual states, because states know their people.
Let me interrupt your ranting for a second.
Okay.
Should we say then, because, Paul in the book of Romans did not say contact your legislature, because that was not something that was available to him.
Right.
But at the same time, when Jesus was arrested, you see a lower magistrate going to a higher magistrate, and you see how that plays out, because you have the local governors, because the Roman government had allowed the board of rabbis, or the body of rabbis, to act like a local governing authority. And so they had right to come to the magistrate above them, and that magistrate went above him because he didn't want the chaos. And we all know the story.
Well, and actually, Paul did appeal to a higher magistrate.
Yes, he did.
Right, when he claimed that he was a Roman, and so he was appealing to a different magistrate than
because
was initially in charge.
As a Roman citizen, he had the right to go to the highest magistrate.
Can I mention a story that might even be a better example of this? In the Old Testament, and this is actually what some of those French Protestants wrote about. They talked about this passage in the Old Testament when King Solomon died. The assumption was that his son Rehoboam would be the next king over all 12 tribes.
Right.
But if you read the Bible carefully, even though they did have a king after Saul, God anointed the king, but the elders of the people made the king.
Yes.
And so David was not king until, he became king of Judah first, because the elders of Judah said, we recognize you as king. And then eventually all of the other elders of all, and so he became king over all Israel.
Yeah, even the king rules at the consent of the people.
Well, the representatives of the people, the lower magistrates. And so when Solomon's son Rehoboam is assumed to become king, the elders of all of the, you might say in our language, representatives, the respected people from those local areas, all come and say, we will serve you forever if you, and they gave a list of
demands,
requests/demands.
Yeah.
And when Rehoboam basically said, no, I can be king and I can do what I want, I don't have to listen to you, those 12 tribes, the elders of 10 of those said, actually, we don't have to listen to you. We can go choose somebody else to be king. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah. Is it Jeroboam?
Jeroboam.
Yeah, Jeroboam. Yeah. That's confusing that they have so close of a name.
Yes.
That's not really fair.
Yes. That's how you know that this really happened, because nobody would write that. These two...
Yeah. And that was because he listened to his peers, right? Like, as opposed to the wisdom of the older guys or whatever. Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. So play that out for us, though, Robbie. What happened when he took he basically was saying, I am the law, right? And they said, well, actually, no, we're going to go over here and we're going to create. And that's when the kingdom separated. It was no longer it was a divided Israel.
And we have that general concept put into our Constitution because the legislature,
has to confirm
the House and the Senate can remove a president from office, and it's very hard to do, which is
by design.
Yeah, by design. Yeah. But and someone might say, well, that's never happened. But I mean, it would have to Richard Nixon if he had not resigned.
Stepped down,
That's why he resigned, because so many people had turned against him, even in both political parties, that they would have removed him. And so that principle, the fact that you have lower leaders have the ability to remove the higher ones there is incorporated into our laws.
And so you're saying our system has built in checks against that a little bit, right? And you mentioned it with the three branches. Those are each, balance of power, the checks and balances and all that. But what about when, let's think about COVID is obviously still very fresh in all of our minds, even though it's only, 5 years ago, 3-4 years ago, whatever. That was unchecked government. So what was the right way to respond? Now we're a couple years behind it.
And see, we were debating amongst my pastor friends because I remember the Governor DeSantis got on, and what was it, 14 days to
slow the spread. Yeah. 2 weeks
to something the curve.
Yeah.
They had a whole
flatten the curve.
Flatten the curve.
Flatten the curve. Yeah.
14 days to flatten the curve, and he asked all churches to go online for at least those 14 days. And so you were an elder at the time, right?
I was.
Yeah. And we're like, okay, we're going to do this. And I will never do that again because I gave to the government a sphere that belonged to God. But
the church, the sphere belonged to the church.
Yeah, because
God had appointed it.
Because God appointed the church to meet.
Right.
Do you think, though, that if that had been what we actually stuck with, where we only, because slowing the spread for a couple of weeks and saying, hey, for the sake of our brothers. Now, I understand it turned out not to be as deadly as we were thinking, but putting yourself back into the mindset that we were in.
Everybody was going to die.
Right. It does make sense. It does make sense. The problem there was they took the very limited amount of time to slow the spread to we're going to stay closed until there's
it became
it all.
It became please do it to in some of these states. I'm going to throw you in jail if you don't do what we tell you. To going too far. They went way too far. And they lied. We found out so much that they've lied about so much over the last couple of years. I mean, if you get the vaccine, you won't get the virus. If you get the vaccine, you might still get the virus, but you won't spread it. Well, if you get the vaccine, you can still get the virus.
To be fair, they may not be liars. They may just be incompetent.
There was, I think there was,
what is it?
I think there's a
little quote
bit
about
both.
that. Never attribute to malice what could actually be attributed to foolishness or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both, honestly. But get back on track. Some of the governments and some of the states started playing the place of God, saying, yes, you can go riot in the streets. That's safe. But if you sing in church, you're going to get people sick. And it wasn't the outsiders that were being mean towards the pastors. It was the people inside the clergy, inside the pastorates who were ripping each other apart. And I remember having a conversation with pastors about one church that didn't do the 14 days. And do you feel like they're just being disobedient to the government? And I'm like, no. And this was a debate. And I think it was a good learning time for the church because we hadn't experienced it in a couple hundred years. But at the same time, if I had to do it over again, you don't isolate the healthy. You isolate the sick and the vulnerable. That's how you deal with all viruses. If I had to do it over again, I would say the doors are open. There's plenty of room for you to spread out, but don't feel like you have to go against your conscience if you feel that your life's in danger because you are vulnerable. I'll still put it online. We still love you, but I would not have closed the door because the Bible commands the brethren to meet together.
Well, and one of the things that we wrote down here was the church forgets her prophetic role when she bows for safety or subsidies.
And the thing about, as you talk about a prophetic role, because as I said before, we don't have the sword, but we do have the word.
Yeah.
The other sword.
The
other sword. Yeah.
And in the United States, we have the freest free speech laws in the world.
Yes.
And it's not even close.
Right.
So we have the easiest ability to use our voice to speak to truth, to tell the government when it is in error, according to God's word, according to what we believe to be wisdom, to what we believe to be the appropriate philosophy of government.
And see, those, I'm interrupt you, those come from constitutional rights. What did big government do to our square where we talked? Anything that went against the narrative they wanted, they got kicked off of all the platforms and they got silenced.
Well, and that's where a lot of corporations actually acted as a para-government branch, if you want to call it that.
With the government's request.
I know you're very focused on the COVID thing, and I do get why that was like this.
I know you want to get
thing.
back to the free speech thing.
But,
I'm just saying they acted tyrannical on that.
But yes, what you're in the COVID situation, you're right. But also, I'm talking about things before COVID and also things since. We have the ability to speak in ways that is much more risky in other countries.
Well, not only do we have the ability, like you're saying, to speak, we actually have more mechanisms to change government policy than people in other countries too. Like we have built-in systems to check those powers.
Yes.
That other countries don't have.
What systems are you referring to?
Well, we're talking about the lower magistrates, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we have all these other checks to the federal government. We have state government. We have
every senator in the federal government answers to
the people in the state, right?
And
the representatives are even closer to the people than even this.
Yeah.
The
so we talk to our local representative. Our local representative talks to the state representative.
Right.
If enough of us put pressure, they go back to the Senate and D.C. and go, "Hey, by the way, you're not going to be reelected because the people we're talking to," and that's how it's supposed to be. Lower magistrate squeezes the upper.
Yep.
I mean, that's really the example you read there about King David dying and
Solomon dying.
King Solomon dying. That's right.
Well, I got a couple quotes for you on this. So Augustine said, "Remove," and this goes back to what you were saying, Robbie, about the government being better than anarchy. Augustine said, "Remove justice, and what are kingdoms but great robberies?" Calvin said, "The magistrate is the guardian of both tables of the law." And then Kuyper said, "When the state ignores God, freedom becomes a mask for tyranny."
I got one from Samuel Rutherford I looked up.
Yeah.
It says, "Power is a loan from God, and to misuse it is treason against the King of Kings."
Say it again. To misuse it? Is that what you said?
Yes. It says, "Power is a loan from God, and to misuse it is treason against the King of Kings." To misuse
the power. Yeah. Right. And so that's what the question that I set us out on this section is, what happens when unchecked government happens, or when there's moral compromise, and ultimately when the government redefines justice that's apart from God's law, it always ends badly, and a lot of times it ends in blood or in some sort of coup or something, because people no longer feel like they have a stake in a claim in their government. All right, so let's see.
That's a good segue into 3.
Yeah, you want to start?
The doctrine beneath the sovereignty of Christ and the servant, the state. So we're looking back at what is the scriptural spine.
Yeah. And what are the boundaries
and
of
what
civil
are the boundaries
government?
Of civil government. I'll go ahead and read.
What are you going to read, Daniel? Okay.
Daniel 2:20-21. "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belongs wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding."
Am I correct? Who's saying that in that passage? Who's speaking?
And Daniel?
Yeah.
I'd have to go look. I'm reading off a note.
Because it's talking about God removing kings and setting kings up. Because I'm thinking that might be Nebuchadnezzar speaking there.
Okay.
But I want to.
Daniel 2. Yeah, you're right, because it's right about there. Let's see. Daniel 2.
While you're looking that up, I'll read John 19:11. And this one says, "Jesus answered him, 'You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given to you from above. And therefore he delivered me over to you.'"
And that I know is Jesus speaking to Pilate.
That's right.
All right.
Yes.
So Daniel's speaking here in the interpretation. So that's part of Daniel's interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's defending the effect that is that the dream he's interpreting.
Yeah, that's. I was going to say
that's
not late enough for it to be the on the wall and all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is him interpreting the statue dream. Is that what this is?
That's where it is.
And so that is prophetical of multiple kingdoms that will be prophesied in the future that will rise and fall. And so God's over all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Is the idea there.
I'm glad you had me look it up because I just pasted it in my notes and I didn't even.
I got to keep you honest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robbie.
I said in one of the Wednesday nights last week, I said, I've got all these, we're now going over the Ordo Salutis, and I said, I'm going to say a lot of theological words, and Robbie's not here, so I'm not going to define even one of them.
Did the people who listen to us
I don't
podcast
think any of them got it, but, it was a chuckle anyway. But, no, what I was really saying was, this is the introduction. I will define all of these, but I'm not going to define them all tonight. So, anyway, so I'm going to read Isaiah 33:22. And it says, "For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, and he will save us."
And the law, and God being the ultimate judge, the ultimate lawgiver, and the ultimate king was also very important because, in a lot of kingdoms, the king was the ultimate authority.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he made the law.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we got to remember that when we talk about Christ or God being the lawgiver, it's not just the Mosaic law, or it is the law of nature itself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
because he's the God of nature.
Because he's the God of nature.
Yeah.
And
so created the order.
He created the order of it.
Yeah.
And so there's some things in nature you don't mess with a mother bear's cups.
Uh-huh.
There's some things that God's written in nature that plays into all things, that play into even the common law, and our founding fathers understood these things. And this goes all the way back to Aquinas, Thomas Aquinas and all that.
Well, natural law goes farther, way farther back than that, too.
He just brought it into Christendom.
But what I was saying is that, like many kings, in their mindset, the king makes the law, the subjects obey the law. But the king, because he makes the law, is above the law.
In some senses.
And therefore can't.
Or he thinks he is. Right.
Yes. But that's what I'm saying. That's the mentality that they have.
Yes, sure.
But in God, in a world where God is the ultimate authority, the sovereignty of God abolishes the sovereignty of the king.
Yeah. Yes. Amen.
And the king is then under a law, God's law.
And then the king, so God is delegating his authority to the three spheres, right? The church, the home, and the government. And then the government has to delegate even further, into the different levels of government that we've talked about.
So it's the king, and again, I'm using king as any kind of government leader, prime minister, president, whatever.
Yep.
It is their job to make sure the people that they have set up are doing what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
President Trump, if one of his secretaries is not doing a good job, repeatedly, he should look at them and say,
You're fired. I knew it was coming. You set that up. Yeah.
But that is it is his job to make sure that they're doing their job, right?
Yeah.
And so God, oftentimes, if leaders are not doing their job, he will bring them down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what we saw in Psalm 2 as well.
Right.
Yep. All right. So civil law must reflect God's law. The job of the civil law is not to replace God's law. It must reflect it. The state protects life and punishes evil. It cannot redeem souls, though. So let's talk about that. What sphere is in charge of redeeming souls? And when I say redeem souls, we know that only God saves, but who is the one that is in charge of,
the spiritual?
Putting the word, the spiritual.
The church.
The church, right, not the government.
Yeah.
And so the government must never assume the role of pastor or parent, right? And that's what, ultimately, that's one of the things that I think has become such a problem, is that our government with, different, welfare programs and things like that, and I'm not, help me out here, Robbie, give me all the clarifiers, but the government has become almost a parent.
Yes.
To so many because of the different programs.
In some ways, the church too, because it was the church's duty to care for the
the church had a duty to do that, whereas the government actually doesn't have as much of a duty to do that.
So they stepped into our sphere, and they stepped into the family sphere.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Stepped into both of them.
I actually don't have a problem with social programs personally, and I don't think we have time. I don't think we have time to go into all that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that every social program that our country does is good. I'm not saying that they're done effectively or well.
Robbie, are you saying you're socialist?
He voted. He went actually up to New York to vote in the New York City election.
He's looking forward to those empty grocery stores.
No, I'm not. I'm not a communist. Just for clarification.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's good.
Comrade Robbie.
Yes.
You're welcome.
So just a socialist then?
No,
Not a communist, just a socialist.
No, I would differentiate between socialism and social programs. But
okay.
Yeah.
I think we all would actually.
Yeah, I'm
just
not
messing.
anti all.
No, we're just messing. Yeah. Okay, so sphere sovereignty reminds us when the magistrate forgets that he is a minister, he becomes a monster.
I like it.
Good.
So you have here doctrinal pillars.
Doctrinal pillars.
Doctrinal pillars.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that again. So you have here doctrinal pillars, delegated authority,
mm-hmm.
moral law.
Mm-hmm.
I would add to the moral law, natural law,
mm-hmm.
justice and mercy, and limited jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And I think those are all biblical boundaries of the government. And it's where they derive their power from.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the government steps outside these, they tend to step in it with the people eventually.
Yeah, and that's what I think the very first episode on the sphere of sovereignty, I talked about how very rarely, and I can't even think of any off the top of my head, but does the family ever overstep into the government or the church overstep into the government, but the government oversteps into the other spheres all the time.
Yeah.
Well, the government has more power.
Correct.
So, and they have, of course, the sword. So they have
the ability
to do it. Literal power of violence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot easier for the government to mess with those spheres than the other way around.
But what happens when you have a Christian nation, a truly Christian nation with leaders who fear God?
Mm-hmm.
Then does the church have more power then to enforce that which was moral and stand on what's moral? Or would that be a stepping out of its sphere? I mean, because I'm thinking back to like the Roman government. They eventually became Christian, and then the church ended up having basically some lower magistrate powers. You look at Jesus and the situation with the board of rabbis. Those rabbis had lower magisterial power.
Mm.
What happens if the church...
Well, that is that. So I just said a minute ago that I can't think of really any examples, but that is a good example of where the church can overstep its boundary when it becomes part of the government.
Yeah.
Right. So like when you have, what's the word I'm looking for? Like theocracy. Yeah. When the church becomes the governing powers, then they've overstepped their boundaries.
But have they? So, I mean, as a post-millennialist, is there a time when we are a theocracy in the future?
Well, it always depends on what you define as theocracy.
And see, this is the reason why anti-Christian nationalists get their panties in a bunch because of this discussion.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, this didn't work good in the past.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Yes, because men are still evil at the end of the day.
Well, and I don't think we're advocating for, like, for instance, in Britain,
mm-hmm.
you know, King Charles is also the head of the church.
Yeah.
So I don't think we want that.
Well, that goes back to the two kingdoms.
Nor do we want our favorite pastor to also simultaneously be our president.
Right.
I think that would be one of the best things for this nation, to have a man of God like that actually at the head of.
Oh no, I don't disagree that.
What I don't want, here's where, and this is where that Christian national argument always goes. There are people within the church who I would never want representing the government. Right. And so ultimately, yes, you want a godly person who fears the Lord and acts as a servant over the government. But then they start going, okay, well, would you want Pastor Sheila being, the head of the government or whatever?
Why would you use that oxymoron?
Just to make the point that I'm trying to make very clearly. So, like, I guess that's one of the benefits of living in the United States, is that we have those separated powers.
Here's kind of how I think about this. I believe in separation of church and state in the sense that we've already talked about they're different spheres.
Yeah.
Now, the way people use separation of church and state presently is not always the correct one.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe our Supreme Court today is better on this than they were a generation ago. But here is how this is my ideal world, and you guys tell me what you think about it in this particular area.
Mm-hmm.
And my ideal United States we have a very large percentage of our population going to good Bible teaching churches.
Right.
And they are not the church is not taking over the government or directly leading the government, but they are instructing the people who vote.
Yeah.
And the people who vote are going to be voting according to God's principles.
Correct.
Which means that the people being put in office are also going to be living by God's principles.
Right.
And then they are going to govern whether that's involving writing laws, whether that's involving judging laws, whether that's acting out the law. Because as we've said, we have, in the way we structure our government, we have 3 different branches, right?
Right.
So in all of those, they are doing that with the idea of honoring the Lord and allowing laws to reflect the laws of nature and the laws of God. Would you guys say that that's
okay?
That's your
I will say yes with this caption on top of that. That is the full outcome of the new covenant. No man's telling any man of the Lord, for they all know him. From the birth to death, they all know the Lord. There will come a time when men know the Lord and his holiness floods the earth.
After the rapture in Jesus.
Yeah, I hear you. So here's the point. So yes,
after the tribulation,
I think the Great Commission is the means by which we get back there. But the end result, what you just actually mentioned, both the Christian nationalists and the non-Christian nationalists would agree on. We're all looking for the same outcome. Christ is king. It's just we're a little bit more vocal and straightforward about it, and they don't want to say the silent part out loud.
When you say the non-Christian nationalists, you mean Christians that don't claim to be Christian nationalists.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are different stripes of Christian nationalism that gets out of balance.
Yeah, there's certain ones that I would not subscribe to.
But I subscribe to a historical Christian nationalism.
And there's different, the way certain Christians would apply God's word to our current laws would probably also come in different flavors. And you would have some inter-Christian differences on how that would go.
For sure. And that's why, I mean, honestly, I think that's why it's having a hard time getting clarification, is because there's so many different, like, for instance, let's say with abortion. If we had control of the government, would you punish women for having an abortion? Or do you, and so there's like this whole, like, in fact, there was just a debate like a couple weeks ago with Doug Wilson and Durbin. Durbin. And they were doing like one on like
incrementalism versus smash mouth is what he called it.
Smash mouth incrementalism versus abolition.
That's what it was.
And so like you have
specifically about abortion, you
mean?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. And so the both of those parties would claim Christian nationalism, but then they have a difference on how they would run that. And so, both of them would say we want no abortion, period. Right. But how do you get there? And so ultimately, I think that's where I wish there was a way that we could start like laying those out. This is what we would do. And so, and it hasn't really come to that yet where we've laid it out. Okay, this is what we would do. Like, for instance, on blasphemy laws.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's one that has been a pretty hot topic too. Like, well, would you be allowed to, or Sabbath? Those are big conversations about not having agreement or whatever.
Well, let's go back to the abortion real quick, because I'm with Durbin on that particular issue. So here's the thing.
Which direction is he
So
on?
Durbin is an abolitionist. He says that it should be outlawed and the death of babies should be punished. And anybody who says, well, we're not a theocracy, they're totally missing the fact that the death for the spilling of innocent blood started in the law of nature in Genesis. For man's blood if man's blood is spilt, man's blood shall be spilt, for the man is made in the image of God. God wrote that into creation law. That is not an Old Testament moral law. That is an actual law set in nature because we're image bearers of God.
Yeah.
So the answer then is, should there be a death penalty? Yes. Now the question is, who does it belong to, the doctor or the mother?
Right.
That's the question that I would have a hard time with.
Yep.
Well, I think definitely the doctor, right? That's not a hard part, right?
No.
The question would be the woman, right?
And if there were laws against the doctor, a lot of them would be eliminated.
And you'll meet Christians who go, well, he didn't realize what he was doing. Neither did the people who were on trial after World War II. I mean, the thing is wrong is wrong is wrong is wrong. And either you think God is right and what he said is right, or you are simply saying God is not right, I'm more gracious than God. And then you have the other people come up and be like, that's old covenant, new covenant, because in new covenant we give grace. Okay, but that's not even part of the moral law. it is in the moral law, but it's written into the law of creation itself. That started before Mount Sinai. So God prizes human life so grand that the spilling of it is something he wants answered for. And not only that, by the time you get to the moral law, he tells us that nations fall under his wrath for not judging the spilling of innocent blood.
Right. And that's the thing when debating, like, what would a Christian ruler, legislature, whatever, what would they ban and what would they allow? Abortion is a pretty easy one there, because that is just a matter of justice.
Yeah.
Because that is, you're directly harming an innocent life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, people might argue, say, about blasphemy laws and
as if we don't already have them. Though.
Right.
We already have them.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just putting that in a different category because they're like saying, like, well, I personally don't like abortion, but who am I to push my belief? I mean, but you're killing.
Right.
Yes, this is murder.
Yeah.
But it's legal. Therefore, it's right. I mean, that's
what they say.
Really, that's the foolish argument of a Christian who thinks that, at one sense, they will tell you can't legislate morality, but on the other sense, they would say we can't punish because morality has been legislated by the government.
See, no one believes this.
True.
Right?
I agree with that.
Really.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, you're right.
Because, like, when Martin Luther King Jr. is saying that we need to stop segregation and that racism is bad, I mean, he was a reverend, right? Like, so he appeals a lot. I'm not.
Yeah.
I understand some of it. I'm not here to defend his theology, right?
Okay. All right.
But a lot of the language he uses is religious language, right? And who's saying, no, you can't do that.
Right.
So what really people aren't really upset about religious language when it comes to stuff in general. It's just the stuff that they want to defend.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
We've got to hit segment 4.
I know. Yeah. Because we're also needing to talk about the fact that Christians do need to obey lawful authority.
Yes.
And so, we see that in Romans 13. So you want to talk through that, Robbie? So my point here is they need to obey lawful authority, but they also have to defy unlawful decrees.
I do think that some Christians, particularly in America, are maybe a little too quick to defy authority sometimes.
Yeah. We're very individualistic. We don't like to be told what to do by anybody.
Ways. I would also say COVID taught us that the church is very quick to obey tyrannical authority as well.
That there is that.
Yeah.
Although we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
And so that also does kind of reflect the fact that, we all have that tendency.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think COVID, especially initially, was a kind of a weird situation because, again, we were being told by a lot of people that everybody was going to die.
But if people didn't push back the way that we have,
we'd still be in masks.
Yeah, and it would have also been an opportunity to find another opportunity to do that. You know,
So, but
I want it to be still present in people's mind.
The governing authorities at that time lost their power by saying, "Oh, the mostly peaceful riots are perfectly safe, but you church people." You meet together, we're going to put you in jail.
Are fine,
but I mean,
church not.
And that all exposed the hypocrisy of it.
That's right.
And that brought even more people along. Because I think I said in different podcasts that those were the type of things that kind of switched my thinking about a lot of that. But we are to obey the law unless we have a very specific reason from God not to.
Amen.
Yeah. Which means we don't get to look at a law and say, well, I don't like this law, therefore God does not like this law, therefore I can disobey it.
I think it should be 70 miles per hour, and God told me so.
Right.
Instead of 55.
He appeared to me in a dream, and he said, So,
guys, stop making fun of my driving.
But yeah, I mean, it does say in those that we do need to honor the law.
Yep.
And Christians should be the model citizens. And when we are defying the government, it is for something grand that God has specifically laid down.
That's right. The only time we should have civil disobedience is when it's in obedience to Christ over the government.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Paul's appeal to Caesar, we have here in the notes, is a perfect example. Acts 25, verse 11, Paul, he's, if then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death.
Right.
But if there's nothing to their charge against me, no one can give up to them. I appeal to Caesar. So He's sitting there under the judgment of lower magistrates, and he appeals to the law. Hey, if I've actually broken a law for which I deserve death, I'm not here to escape. But if I haven't done anything and I'm not guilty, then you need to let me go to a higher authority and make my call, my plea.
Yep.
I think that's the Christian answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I've got a point here that I want to read. It said a Christian nation isn't built by political power, but by righteous people who fear God more than Caesar. Now, I want to make a caveat here because one of the things that we talked a second ago in your ideal vision of government, you said the church teaches people how to vote, and then those people also end up taking roles. One of the things that I think is a problem right now is that Christians despise government. Well, first of all, we all sort of have a general just distrust for government, right? Especially in America.
And then statement.
Yeah. Well, and I think I've not lived in any other country, so I don't know that. But here we have a distrust for it.
Yeah.
And politics is dirty.
Yes.
And so no Christian really wants to go enter that realm. And so all you have is people who you really don't want leading you in that realm. And I don't know how we overcome that. That's one of the things that I've thought about. Like, how do we get good, solid Christians who have the vision into actual roles, because they look at it and it just feels dirty even trying to go into a political role. So what's your solution for that in that ideal vision?
I don't have a full solution to that. I mean, I've not run for public office. So it's really hard for me to comment on that.
Well, I was just thinking, if we're playing it out, how do we get to the point where if we have a Bible-believing church and they're teaching people, how do we also get good people in those roles? That's all I'm thinking.
I mean, I think maybe saying that while government, of course, can be dirty, just saying that government is ordained by God, and so that it is not by nature. It doesn't have to be something that's bad.
Yeah, so in one sense, the amount that we talk down about government makes it actually hard for anybody to want to enter in the government.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, making the case that lawful and obedience in that role can be a good thing.
I think, though, we're seeing a shift in this upcoming generation because of Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
Because of Kirk, there's a handful of young men that say, we want government positions.
Okay.
And I think they're seeing it as their duty to steer that power in a godly way.
I do think it is a duty.
It is a duty. And it's something that I think we can encourage young men in our generation to rise up and lead. And it's definitely something that you have to have a certain set of abilities. So you're either born with those abilities or not.
It's giftings.
Right.
It's a gifting.
Right.
And it's very similar to the giftings that preachers need to have.
Well, I think part of what we need to just do is say that, God, of course, wants people like Christians to become pastors and missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
He also wants people to be salt and light in the business world and work and various other kinds of work.
But I don't think we generally have a hesitation to enter the business world. It's really the political.
Well, I was going to say, but also we need Christian judges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need Christian legislatures.
Yeah.
We need Christian executives.
We need people that are out there writing good laws.
And honestly, like even Christian lobbyists.
Yep.
Honestly.
Yep.
And so Christian police officers. I mean, we need salt and light in every legitimate sphere.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need Christian drug dealers and and things like that, but in every legitimate.
How do they hear the gospel?
And you heard it here.
Wow. That's fair enough. All right. Well, let's give a charge. We could make this one go on for a lot
That's
longer.
That's what we're ending
We're
on.
going to end on that.
Wait, you know what? We need to tell people, if you haven't smashed that like and subscribe button,
do it.
Smash it.
Smash it. Hard.
Like,
pay your taxes, pray for your leaders, preach the truth, but never forget that your citizenship is in heaven. The Christian doesn't worship the flag or burn it. He bows to the king who rules over all nations. And so the state is a servant with a sword, not a savior with a cross. Let it do its job, and let the church and the family do theirs. And when each sphere obeys Christ within its bounds, justice and peace reign. All right. So real quick, I just want to give sort of a roadmap of where we're going. Next week, we're going to have a special episode. And then the following week, we're going to jump into the marriage arc, and we're going to have a couple different episodes on marriage and the purpose of marriage. And we'll talk about roles in the marriage and threats to marriage and how to build one that lasts. You guys have anything else you want to say?
I'm looking forward to the marriage thing.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be helpful to the church.
Yeah. Yep. You good?
I'm good.
All right. You've been listening to the Altars and Ashes podcast. And as always, we want you to stand firm, build faithfully, and let your life bear witness that no throne stands forever but Christ's.